Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As usual, thanks for being on time. For those with stable internet, please switch on your camera and head over to menti.com. I put it in the chat, or go to menti.com and put the code 13616536. And then we kick off in 2 minutes. So for those who have joined already now, it's just 2 o'clock my time. We can use these 2 minutes while we wait for the rest to join. You can tell me either here or in the chat, where did you spend New Year's Eve? And with whom? Was it with friends, with family, a mix?
And in my country, they call it All Year's Night.
Oh, that's really nice. So what are the typical traditions in that night?
Parties, you we call like gatherings of people limes. So people might have a lime at their house, but usually parties. It's like the start of the carnival season for us as well. So right after Christmas and All Year's, we go into our carnival season.
Awesome. Yeah, we do too, actually. We're gonna have all these parades now coming up, and the main peak is in February for all the carnival parades.
Yep, yep, same for us.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with Easter, I think, historically, no? Like that
Yes,
is,
it does with
yeah,
Ash Wednesday. We call it, well, Ash Wednesday. So we end Ash Wednesday, everything stops.
over partying time over.
Over
Yes.
party time, yeah.
Yes. And the rest of you, you can speak, by the way, these days, because we are less people. You can unmute. Okay, everyone's shy though. Well, then let's begin. It's 2 minutes past. So, welcome everyone. Once again, nice to see you. It's my first week back in the office. So excited to see you all again. And we are talking about resilient enterprises today. And for this, I'm very happy that we have again Maria with us from EY, who you have met already earlier on. So give her a warm welcome, everyone, with the reactions in the chat. Now, as usual, where do we stand? We are in week 5. Today is Resilient Enterprise, and next week is really all about IP. So, trademarks, copyrights, patents. So, be very excited about this. And for those who have not got in touch with their IP coach, please make sure that you do this right away after this masterclass, because otherwise you're missing out on this really valuable expert time. Awesome. Welcome for the rest who have joined. For those with stable internet, please switch on your camera. And we're going with this to the first Menti question of today is actually what supposed you most, since we're speaking about resilience today, what or who maybe supports you most when you're navigating change or uncertainty? And it's an open question. It could be people, it could be kind of like actions. So, what are your strategies? And we see already emotional support from a family coming in. Journaling, faith, family again. I think journaling is a great practice Each year I'm like, I want to get into it, and each year it's the next New Year's resolution, but maybe let's see if 2026 is my journaling year. Quiet time, faith. So we have two people who rely on faith. And for those who have just joined, we're going to use Mentimeter quite a bit in today's class, so please also join this. So we have gaining perspectives of different people under said uncertainty, faith, family, and grounding habits. And it's lovely to see that a lot of you can really support on your family to go back in difficult times. Awesome. And with this, we already know Maria, and with this, officially over to you.
Happy New Year, everyone. Very happy to be back today. Unfortunately, I have to leave a little earlier, but Leah and Sarah are going to take over. This is a great topic, resilience. And when I think about resilience, and we could go to the definition of resilience, but I could tell you guys, when people ask me to speak about resilience, the thing I think about the most is a cockroach. So when somebody says you're like a cockroach, don't take it in a bad way. I'm very happy if I'm called a cockroach because that means I can adapt. That means I will survive, and all the disasters that are going on, I will still be there. So when you think about resilience, that's what you're really thinking about. So resilience from just a definition is really your ability to recover when something happens. And when you think about resilience, it's not about dealing with it after, it's about how you deal with it before. So let's go to the next slide, Melina. Who's changing these slides? I'm sorry, I don't know. Okay, so topics for today is how are we building a resilient enterprise? And if you guys, and I'm sure all of you have seen that startups, so when you look at the probabilities of startups surviving, it's like about 50%. So now what we have to think about is how do you build from now your organization, your business to be able to adapt quickly? And how do you, the enterprise resilience is how do you put that now in the operations of your business? So really and truly, what we want to be able to do today is really set you up to survive, right? So it's all about what do we need to put in place? How do we adapt? How we look at our operating models. That's the way I like to look at resilience. You want to go ahead, Melina? So what is the first word that comes to mind when you hear resilience? Now y'all can put a cockroach. Right. Withstanding setbacks. That is excellent because that's exactly what it is. And when you're an entrepreneur, the one thing you have to be able to deal with is withstanding setbacks because you're going to get it all the way through your journey. Believed, adaptability, grit, fortitude, getting back up. Absolutely. So these are like the outcomes, right? So remember, all these things are some of the outcomes of resilience. So what you have to think about in order to have that outcome, what do the inputs need to be into the business to get that outcome? Great. Okay. Next one. If your business were a tree, which type would you want it to be? Oak, bamboo, palm. Great. Actually, that was my favorite. I didn't want to say it up front, but bamboo is also my favorite for a number of different reasons. Not only is it adaptable, but you can use it in so many different ways, and it actually takes over wherever it goes. So it grows easily. There's lots of bamboo in my country. Beautiful. but it also takes over the space in which it exists. So as an entrepreneur, definitely you want to be like a bamboo tree. Let's go ahead. Go ahead. Right. So I said this before. It's the ability to recover or adjust easily to misfortune or change. And I think more than ever now, there's a term that I've used in all my presentations and stuff, and it's called change churn. So never, I mean, I'm around much longer than you all. I have 5 decades of existence, and never in my life have I seen so much change in a short space of time. And it's coming from all angles. It's coming from your geopolitical situations. It's coming from, when we think about it from sustainability and all the changes being made. We see in the hurricanes, we see in things increasing, we see in tariffs. So now more than ever, being able to get a business to thrive, you have to be able to recover. You have to be able to adapt very quickly. Let's go ahead, Lilia. So, this is what I was saying before. When you talk about resilience, and there's another slide that kind of looks at it from what we call business recovery and what's the difference. One is proactive and one is reactive. So to build an organization that thinks about resilience, it comes back to your mindset. It comes back to, I think, some of the words we saw before, having grit, comes back to being tough, comes back to how do I make my organization adaptable? How do I build that culture? So resilience is very much a culture as well. And when we think about the green economy now and where the discussions have been going, so I also work on the M&A side. And when we look at what transactions are going on in sustainability, it has shifted a lot over the last 5 years. So the top five the top of it would have been renewable energy. Now what you're seeing, more investments are being made in the circular economy. And what does that mean for you as an entrepreneur? You kind of have to see, okay, as the policy shifts, as things change, what am I bringing to the market? Is it still relevant? Do I need to change what I'm bringing to the market or how I change the market? Because the policy shifts are happening all the time. I mean, all of you are looking at green, and if you really follow it, and if you look at what is happening in the world, all the promises that have been made are not being kept. All the policies that should be, implemented, not being done. So there are a lot of people that would have come with expectations that these things would have taken place already and build a business model around that. And now you're seeing their setbacks. So it really is about, how do you make your ideas? How do you adapt who you hire, how you hire, your fixed costs in order to be able to change as things change. And the last one on this slide, which says an integrated approach builds trust and value, aligning strategy. Your strategy cannot be, it's good to have a strategy, but your strategy also has to build into it flexibility. So when we're talking about having this resilient mindset, you can't be set in your ways. You have to have a culture that we could face things, we could change things, we could move as policy shifts, etc. You want to go ahead, Melina? So this is just kind of showing you all the disruptions that have been going on, and we can add to it. So if we look again, as I said, a lot of decades in my life, this last decade has had all the changes. The natural events, or right here, I'm in Jamaica actually today. I live in Trinidad and Tobago, but I'm in Jamaica. And Jamaica, had big hurricane about 2 months ago, 6 weeks to 2 months ago, and it's going to take 5 years for some of those areas to recover. Now, what the government is talking about is we're going to recover, but we're going to build differently and build better. So that's kind of what you have to think about. If this is now becoming, the norm, how do we build our buildings differently? And when you're looking at opportunities, how do we, invent products that have more resilience to climate change. A few I will add here. One we don't have here is the drought in Panama. So Panama always had rainfall. In 2023, 2024, drought for the first time in its history. That caused a lot of supply logistics to be disrupted. So you would have had inventory that you would usually be holding for 6 weeks, 3 months. You now had to have the working capital to have for a longer period of time. So these are all the things we kind of have to think about. One I will mention as well is distressed suppliers. Where are you going to get your product from? Are there droughts in those areas? Are there disease? I now have to look for other suppliers. How is that going to affect your cost of goods? So all these things we kind of have to think about now in terms of understanding these disruptions. What could happen next? If we think of COVID and COVID-19, the companies that were digitally savvy are the ones that survived because they didn't need to be in the office in order to deliver their services. So again, we have to think through, how do we put technology in place? How do I even come up with products that are going to help people deal with all of this disruption? More than ever, you have to kind of think about this. Look at war, Russia, Ukraine. Right in my country, Trinidad and Tobago, we are 7 miles off of Venezuela. So again, it's getting closer to home. I could tell you in the Caribbean, we never thought that we would see anything close to looking like war. So now everybody has to stop and think, what do I need to do? How do I make my business resilient to this kind of change? How do I protect my employees? So again, and when we talk about technology, cyber comes in play, your data privacy. So as startups, you guys kind of have to think about one, where the opportunities here and where the risk, and how do I need to operate or start my business to be able to cope if there are these disasters. Yeah. Also, guys, if you all want to make comments, say anything, please raise your hand. Let's make it interactive. Remember, I told you all the last time, if you're an entrepreneur, you got to be bold, you got to be brave. Otherwise, you're not going to be resilient. So do not be shy. If you have comments or you want to add to it, please do. Go ahead, Melina. So I think we said a lot of this, right? So volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. I want to talk a little bit about complexity because once you have volatility and uncertainty, complexity comes into play. And complexity, because you have so many different things happening at the same time. That's what makes something complex. Something simple, there's certainty, then it's simple. When there isn't certainty, it becomes complex. And, a lot of talks that I do now when I talk about the people part of it is you now have 4 generations existing in a business at the same time. So you have a boomer who thinks very different from an X, who thinks very different from a millennial, and then, Zs, which most of you will probably fall within, the X's and the boomers always have something to say about the Zs. So now you have to think about the way that employees think, what they expect, what they want to get. How does that help you to be resilient? And I would tell you, it actually works to your benefit. So if you think of your fixed costs in a business, one of it, of course, is having a building, a place. But when people are remote working or willing to do more flexible work arrangements, you can actually cut down your fixed costs. So it's actually a good thing. So employee expectations, what you would find too is work-life balance now, of course, is a bigger issue. Our generation, what's work-life balance? I mean, you all have work-life balance because we did all the work so that the next generation can have the work-life balance. That's the way we look at it. So you really have to think about who else, barriers to entry because of those fixed costs not no longer being a requirement. What the downside of that from a business perspective is your barriers to entry have been reduced. What do I mean by that? For somebody to compete with you, it has become so much easier. And if you think of the technology, if you think of AI, if you think of now, you don't have to be a coder to code, then what that means is getting competition to whatever you have has now raised the bar. So again, you have to be on top of your game. You have to think about what's going to be my differentiator. What am I going to bring to the table that somebody can't compete with me very quickly? So time to market, also important. Again, because of all these things and all of these changes, the positive and the negative is that someone could compete with you so much faster than before. Customer behavior changes. I want to talk about that a bit because, the person who could foresee how customers are going to buy are the ones that are going to succeed. Again, it's always understanding customer behavior changes. The new generation actually cares, which is, beneficial to you guys, being entrepreneurs in the eco space, is that they actually do care how the product is made. What are the labelers? What are is it sustainable, products being used? Where are your raw materials coming from? So now what you have to think about is how do I pivot that from a marketing perspective to attract these new customer behaviors? Any comments around that, guys? Are you all thinking about these things now when you're looking at your businesses and how you're going to come to market? Right, good. Let's go. Great. We have a Menti question. What external forces could most affect my venture in the next 3 to 5 years? So think of what you're bringing to market and all the things going on now, and let's see what we get there. Drought. Okay, so that means raw materials, yeah? Policy, good. If we think of what happened in the US, so a lot of startups in the US that was in the renewable space actually went out of business when the incentives were taken away. So policy, very important. Great. So it seems a lot of what we were talking about before are definitely relevant. Economic stability, forex rates, financing, and of course, financing is very much, directly correlated with what's going on in economies. Supply chain issues, probably number one. EY had a webinar recently looking at how raw material prices are going to go. And cocoa, for example, is one that's supposed to skyrocket. And that goes back again to, droughts, economic instability, etc. Great. So let's go to the next slide. And let's see how we marry now this whole concept of resilience with sustainability. So if you think about sustainability and, it's amazing how this has become this word, but this is how we should be thinking anyway, right? It's really and truly, how do we ensure that the resources we use now are not exhausted so that the future have resources? That's all sustainability really means. And everybody should have been thinking about that. For existence. But now, because of course we're human beings, we waste a lot. It's now become this big area of concern. So resilience and sustainability, of course, go hand in hand because sustainability is not only just about the resources, but being able to survive. And to be able to survive, you have to be resilient. So when you're looking at this, it's really one and the same. One is the input, the resilience to me is the input, and the sustainability is the output. So you want to be able to think about with all these changes, and we just had it up there, policy changes, drought, supply issues. We know what those things are. So then how do we build into our processes? How do we build into the business that when these things come up, we are resilient to it. We can find other suppliers. We can, look at our product mix, etc., to be able to be sustainable. And when you think about how companies build, and I think this is what is very different to 20 years ago when somebody looked at, when I want to start up a business, what do I need? All we really used to focus on was the financial capital. I need money, right? I need money to start my business. Now, The dialect is changing a little bit different. The conversation is a little bit different. And we're looking at, okay, to be sustainable, we have to look at our human capital. How do we ensure not only that our employees, but also where our supply and the human capital for our supply is coming from? The social capital, how are we impacting our communities, our environment? I mean, for me, from a sustainability perspective, the number one thing is, reducing poverty. So when you look at social capital, is also how am I ensuring my communities and being impacted positively? Manufactured capital, looking at our efficiencies, looking at our operations, which really drives your ability to adapt from a pricing perspective, your ability to be competitive. So natural capital, of course, is how we use the natural resources. So when we look at all these areas of capital, and if you think about from your input perspective, how do I make each of these parts of it be resilient? So again, it goes back to how do I build a resilient workforce? How do I build that culture that I have people that easily could adapt when we need to adapt? How do I look at, again, my hiring practices, my retention, how I pay, my compensation? If I make too much of my compensation fixed, then when I need to reduce costs, it becomes a lot harder. So again, it's really marrying these two things and thinking now. So as you all go through this program and you start thinking about what's my operating model? What are the changes that we see taking place? And is my operating model designed to deal with these changes? That's really what all of this is really saying. And again, don't just look at it from a balance sheet and a profit and loss perspective and a money perspective. Look at the capital from all these areas. Lena, want to go ahead? All right, so let's see now how we actually kind of put this into place. So at the end of the day, when we talk about building out this sustainable long-term value, let's look at the bottom first, right? And why I would look at the bottom first is your customer value and your people value. You need employees to drive customer value, and you need customer value in order to be able to pay for employees. So you have to be looking at, how are you looking at your customer? How do you meet your customer demands? How do you understand what your customer is looking for? And, if you have all these disruptions, how are you going to be able to still build customer value? So when you think of these sudden disruptions, and we went through most of these already, and you think about, adapting to these long-term changes, it's looking at your technology. I'm going to talk, just talk a little bit about the big ones: technology, innovation, and evolution. Again, technology change, that change is so fast. Something you invent today in 3 months may not be relevant. So when I think about sustainable and resilient enterprises, I just want to use the example, for example, of Amazon. And why? If I think of Amazon and their kind of purpose is about the customer experience, but every year Amazon brings another feature and another feature. What it means is anybody who's trying to catch up with Amazon continuously has to improve, right? So Amazon has really made itself almost impossible to compete with in the countries that they compete in. So, and if you look at the customer value, if you have an issue, you press a button, you say you want a refund, they don't ask you for a whole set of paperwork. So again, you have to think about, what do I need to put in place if I'm really trying to drive that customer value? And I think the societal value, which we don't, kind of connects customer value and financial value. Because now with customer behaviors, I am saying if I have to spend $1, I want to feel better about spending my dollar. So I want to be in a company that is doing something for society. And that then gives you financial value. So none of these pieces of the pie are separate and apart. They have to work together in order for you to have the sustainable long-term value. So when you're thinking about your business practices, and you guys are young, y'all are now starting up. So now it's not transforming, it's building for you. Yeah, the older generations have taken too long to transform. And that is why the opportunity for you guys to come up with new ideas, new opportunities has been open for you all because they have not changed or transformed their business practices. They have not looked at how they are decarbonizing their products. They have not looked at how they've, using the circular economy to reduce risk. They have not looked at how their performance management is different to how it was before by understanding what matters to their people. So when we talk about enterprise resilience and you're starting up, you want to think about this now so that when you're building it, it's going to be very hard to compete with you. And go ahead, Melina. And I talked a little bit about this before, which is kind of like, moving from this business continuity. So in my time, everybody used to talk about, business continuity risk. What is your business continuity plan? And it was all about, okay, my data, I have that stored somewhere else. So if I have a disaster, there's a backup. It's about, okay, if this was, to collapse, how do we recover? How do we restore? It was not proactive. It was more around if something happens, how do I deal with it? And here are the things that could happen, and here's the things that are going to deal with that. Very much, here's what I predict would happen, here's how I'm going to deal with it. Again, what we want to move towards now, knowing how things are unpredictable, is if this happens, here's how we will change the way we do business. Not how we're going to just recover, but being agile to deal with it. It's a little bit different, could sound the same, but it's more about adapting, not restoring. If you think about restoring, it's about taking something that exists and making it look like how it was before. So when you think of restoration from a building, they actually don't change the building. What they're trying to do is make it look exactly as it looked before. That's not going to work for the unpredictability. Adaptation now is, okay, the business looked like this before, but these changes have taken place. How do I change it to deal with what's happening now? You'll understand that difference between restoration and adaptation, because I think that's really important. Because if you just build back what was there before, you may not be able to compete. The old saying is what got you here will not get you there. And that's the big difference between business continuity focus and enterprise resilience. And I think this is really important, and it's something our generation did not get right. And you guys now have to get it right, because this change train is not going to go down. And you never know, the change might go full circle as well. So we don't know where humans are going to end up. That's the way I kind of look at it. I look at a lot of things taking place now, and it's going full circle. In terms of where we go with technology, what is AI going to do? How AI is going to change the way we work? How AI is going to change the way we think? Are we going to lose our ability to do critical thinking? So all of these things we kind of have to think about. And when we think about societal value, I want you guys to think of it from that perspective as well. Remember, I said the four pieces of the pie have to work together. So if we use so much technology that humans have nothing to do now, what is going to happen to the human race? So there's always this pivot point of too much. And you have to think about that from your adaptability and being agile. Go ahead, Melina. So when we think of, and I said a lot of this before, so I'll just mention a little bit of it. So the first thing, of course, is you have to anticipate. How do you anticipate? You have to stay on top of what's going on in the world, right? You have to stay on top of, okay, where's my supply coming on? What's going on in that country? I'm aware of the geopoliticals in that country. What is the outlook, etc. So you kind of have to anticipate what the change is going to look like. You're not going to be able to predict everything, but you do kind of have to look at, again, what could threaten your ecosystem. Then you, of course, have to prepare. So if we use the examples that people said before, and we look at droughts, if there is a drought, where are other suppliers that I could use? Where can I even get control of where my supply is coming from? Who can I work with to ensure that when I have these issues, they can help me still get access to my products? Being able, so that's the anticipate, prepare, how do I do it? And then how do I respond? How do I respond? Now, if you're preparing in the proper way, the response should be almost automatic because we've also already thought about, well, what's going to happen? We have prepared. How are we going to deal with it? And a lot of this has to do with the culture that you build in your organization. If you are too structured, too process oriented, you're going to find that people are not able to respond quickly. So, again, this is where critical thinking comes in. You have to build your organization in such a way that your employees understand how to think, how to respond. What if all of the internet went down? Can we still survive? So these are the different things we have to think about. And of course, the adaptation. And with adaptation comes reshaping. So as we adapt, we have to think about what are the parts of our operating model? What are the parts of our business model we now have to change in order to deal with this new environment? So it's a nice, I find this is a nice kind of easy chart to kind of just have in your head. So when you're thinking of your processes, when you think of your product development, when you think of what you want to do, you kind of think through, and it's nice to map this out in a chart that gets you thinking. You know, there's something called future mapping, which kind of says, well, if this happens, what does this affect all around? It's good to put that on paper. It's good to kind of map that out and think it through. That's really how you marry the anticipate, prepare, and respond together. Yeah. Efficiency, of course, this is what I was talking. When you talk about efficiency, what you want to look at is how do I reduce fixed costs? How do I look at the most economical way? And I'm going to say economical because cheap or least cost is not necessarily efficient, right? So you have to think of what is the outcome and what is the most cost-effective way to get that cost. How do I build out? Again, I could say it over and over again. How do I reduce fixed costs to variable costs? So as volumes drop, my costs drop with it. Rather than my volumes drop, I can't supply the market because of disruption, and I am straddled with all this fixed costs. Diversity, very important. So if you're thinking about adaptation and if you're thinking of things are changing, if everybody's thinking the same way, you're not going to be able to adapt and reshape really quickly. And the great thing about diversity is getting different minds and different talents. So before I would tell you, creative people used to just be in the creative world. Now creative people are needed throughout all the organizations because of how marketing has changed, the rise of social media. All of this has now changed. You need creative people who could really help you with adaptation. Yep, next one. Menti question. What is one thing I can work on in the next 3 months to make my business more resilient? Mm, mm.
So it seems like the majority is going for efficiency.
Yep, great. I like this. We have a little time, so let's get a little discussion around this. And when you guys think about, making your business more efficient, what are some of the things you're thinking through on the efficiency side? Come, brave entrepreneurs, come forward.
Yeah, raise your hand. Perfect. Daniel, over to you.
Hello. Thank you for the very interesting presentation. For us, is speed of building. So how fast can we build our product for our clients?
And what you're going to use in order to be able to do that, that will make you efficient.
I think machinery is very important. For example,
Yeah.
now we're doing a lot by hand. So when we have machines that can speed up the process, it also kind of reduces reliance on our human resources.
Right.
And of course, will make us build much faster.
Great. Gauri, am I
Thank you.
pronouncing that right?
Yeah, it's Gauri. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So, in my case, I've opted for adaptability because my whole business depends on the raw material. So to adapt to those raw materials, if there is some mishap during the supply of those raw materials, I have to adapt that way. Also, there is another case of, the raw materials, the agriculture waste I have are seasonal. So what if that season, due to climate change, it doesn't, there is something that happens which inhibits me getting that kind of raw material. So I have to adapt within these 3 months, so that I can look into different suppliers, maybe not just in my state, but different states who can get me
Yeah.
that supply, and I have to arrange for that. So that's my take.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Emma?
Yes, thank you. For us, our concern is choosing between, as we are expanding, choosing between space, so more facility space, and or machinery. And looking at the cost wise, looking at our budget, we have to find a way to make the best decision while also coming out with more products so we can sell and make more money. So for us, we have to decide what's the best decision, whether we go for more space or we go for more machinery. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And always remember this when you're trying out something or you're trying to ramp up and not sure what your volume is going to be, contract manufacturing is a good alternative, right? So somebody who has excess capacity that you don't have to put out the capital for the machinery, but somebody else could produce it for you. Something to always think about so that you don't have this heavy fixed costs. It's somebody else's fixed costs.
Thank you. I'll take that into consideration. Thanks.
Lydia? Lydia, you're on mute.
Okay, hello. Yeah, sorry. Oh, yeah. Okay, so for us, I think the adaptability would also apply to us. So for over the past few months, like a couple of months, we've seen that imports restrictions on grains like soy and maize has been removed. And the export restrictions, so like different policies, export restrictions has also been put on the same ingredients. So there has actually been an influx of a lot of grains. So soy, for instance, the price has actually dropped from 1,200 to like 500 cedis, and that is competing with our product. So we've seen that, like, I mean, over the past few weeks, we were making plans to commercialize our animal feed, but now we are thinking of focusing our efforts on our organic fertilizer instead of the animal feed so that we can be able to survive within the period and then maybe in the future focus on the animal feed.
Yeah. And that's always a risk, right? When you're in something that is kind of like a commodity, it then goes back to how do you differentiate yourself, either by how you deliver, your customer experience. Those are the kind of things you kind of have to think about.
Okay. All right.
Leaf, am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, that's great. One of the things that we're balancing right now is how much debt we take on as we expand. And I think about resilience and efficiency is what you take on enough debt to expand. That's great, but you take on too much, and now that becomes a risk that actually can pull you under. And so I think one of the things in the next 3 months, we do a lot of solar financing. We've received a lot of financing for solar that runs a lot of our sites. And so I think paying off a couple of those solar assets so that we can kind of get out of the weight of the debts that we can then move on and receive financing for other things. But right now, financing and figuring out debt, I think, is a big question for us in these next 3 months.
Yeah, that's your whole capital structure, right? So when you think about your capital structure, you really have to think through if there was, what is the drop I could take where the debt is now going to eat up all my cash flow and I can't reinvest into the business. And that's how kind of you look at that debt equity, that proper marry, because at the end of the day, equity gives you patient money. So when things go bad, you don't have to pay it back, right? But then it's also more expensive because you have to give up, piece of your ownership, etc. But you have to think through really and truly, because I do receiverships as well. And that is the biggest part where people have over leveraged and the business had a sudden drop and then they just couldn't pay back the debt. And then what you end up doing is you working for the bank, you're not working for yourself. Last one, Ramata. Am I pronouncing that right?
That's correct. So this session has really come at the right time for our business. The last 2 weeks, we've had really heavy rains in Zambia, Livingstone specifically, and
Right.
farm runs across the Maramba River. So we've lost all our crops because our fields have flooded. So I picked adaptability so that the business can adjust quickly to change without breaking. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where it have some innovation that needs to happen, right? So Caribbean, same thing. I actually invested in some young entrepreneurs that were doing a certain type of pepper that, only grows here. And heavy rains just wiped the entire thing out. And you can't even get insurance. A lot, I don't know how it is where you are, but getting insurance for agriculture is very hard. So it's really looking at, how do you find other ways, other areas, or even, connect with people who could help with how do we deal with all these kind of things in agriculture. Again, it does raise opportunities of what could be done. Yep. Okay, so I think for me, this is kind of the wrap-up time, and Sarah and Leah are actually going to take over from me. I have to go to another conference. But guys, really good to connect with you all again. Very excited. When we're thinking about resilience, my biggest advice to you guys is actually, and Leaf, what you raised there was a good comment that I think everybody needs to look at where you are when you're in a startup and you haven't reached that kind of mature stage, is what is that capital structure? I want you guys to think of those 4 pieces of the pie, the financial, the customer. Always remember the customer and the people is what going to drive the financial value. So when you're thinking about resilience, it's always thinking through what is the customer going to do next? How could I make that customer sticky? Either by the way I deliver, the way where my product is coming from, how I market, but always remember this, how you treat with the customer, and that whole, adaptation, etc., goes back to the customer, and that will drive the financial value. And again, you don't want to be so leveraged that you have no money to reinvest in what you need to do to deliver the customer value. So I hope this was helpful. Happy to be here again. I'm so sorry I have to rush today, but I actually came to Jamaica for this, so I can't miss it. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you,
Bye.
Maria, and good luck with your conference.
Okay,
Thank
bye.
you.
All right. And with this, Sarah, are you taking over on the final tips before we go into breakout sessions today?
I will. And Leah, feel free to kind of chime in to add any additional details. So Maria wanted to leave you guys with kind of what she calls this resilience checklist. So all of this is things she kind of touched upon in her presentation, but just outlined kind of those key things like, are you doing this? Are you thinking about this? How can you kind of integrate it more into your business strategy and plans? So the first one is around this future planning. So we use a term called kind of future back planning as well. Really putting yourself in the future or the many different types of futures, kind of doing that scenario planning to say, we don't know what it'll look like in 5 years, in 10 years, but we have ideas and structured ways of thinking that it could look like one of these scenarios. And then saying, how am I preparing kind of my business for these different potential scenarios? She talked about adaptability a lot. The comments you guys made and the stories you shared, I do think really kind of just highlight the need for this. So to be ready to make those changes, to have backup plans, and to be ready to shift. The next one around financial strength. So really kind of knowing your finances inside and out, thinking through those different what if scenarios, knowing your financial runway, and you know, really thinking about, Leaf, kind of what you said around what are these different investment decisions that I'm making? How are they impacting my financial strength and financial modeling? Next one is around kind of full visibility of the value chain. And you can see like how linked all of these are, right? Because you need to be adaptable if you have kind of risks in your value chain. How are you diversifying your suppliers? How are you thinking about kind of different ways to ensure business continuity when there may be disruptions to the value chain. Related to that is kind of those backup options. So do you have alternative suppliers, alternative logistics plans, and plans for critical services? Things around data protection and tech readiness, and knowing kind of your assets more broadly. So where are your physical assets? What are your dependencies kind of on external parties to keep those assets safe and operating? And then, you know, more of the people-oriented things. So who's on your team? How do you have plans? You know, if somebody leaves the team quickly, do you have backfills? Do you have do folks know how to keep the business running if anything happens to kind of a core key person on your team? And then the last one here around skills development. So, you know, really upskilling the team so that when unexpected circumstances, disruptions do occur, that you have a well-rounded team that can together kind of be resilient, be adaptable, and address those challenges. And these slides will be shared with you, so you can kind of keep this checklist in your back pocket. And then if we jump to the next slide. Here, these kind of final focus areas, I think if Maria thought very much thinking of you guys as eco and green businesses. So really understanding kind of what's happening both inside and outside of your venture. So these things she talked about around climate risk, but also policy shifts and things like that. Being prepared to keep essential activities running and restarting after a disruption. Tracking these policy changes. You can tell, you know, she has, I'm sure, in her years of consulting, seen some, you know, challenging stories around these things. So really taking those learnings and emphasizing them here, and really thinking about how to continuously improve your solution to kind of meet your customer needs and exceed your customer needs, which she also emphasized throughout. So those were kind of the final tips we wanted to share. Leah, anything you would add to that?
I know I think you did a great job kind of reiterating and emphasizing what Maria shared earlier. I would say now that we do have a great opportunity for everyone to have their own discussions and share from their learnings what their journey is like so far, how they plan to become more resilient amongst yourselves, and maybe get some learnings from other participants, I think would be great because we all are ecopreneurs. We're all in the same circle of business. So we do have breakout rooms now, 10 minutes, but we can give you some more time for sure based on the discussion we've had. And I can hand over to Melina to kind of walk you through how you'll be broken up and that kind of thing.
Perfect. Thanks so much,
And
Tara and Leah.
actually,
Yeah.
sorry, Milena, just to add one more thing here. We've kind of profiled these two questions. So, you know, what does resilience mean for you? And also kind of what are you already doing to address some of the things that Maria raised in her presentation. We do have time. So I think hopefully, you know, this sparks a lot more conversation. So feel free to talk amongst yourselves, like general reflections on Maria's presentation, anything that, you know, you had as a key takeaway, anything, you know, really use it as a way to learn from each other, who's doing what has worked for your peers. And then we'll kind of come back. We'll regroup after about 15 minutes, and I will ask for one representative from each of the groups to kind of share kind of a key learning or a key insight from your discussion. And with that, I'll get
Perfect.
back to you, Milena.
I think you did all the words I normally would say. So I'm going to open the breakout rooms now. It's automatically assigned, so you should get a pop-up message now. And then please accept. As usual, if you have any difficulties, let us know. And then we see each other in the main room in 15 minutes. Okay, Margaret. Okay, it's gone. Jishnu. Do you have difficulties? We see your mic is unmuted, but we don't hear you. I'm going to move you to another room, so you should get another pop-up message if that was the issue. Then, okay, patient worked.
And Milena, just checking, you need about 10.
Welcome back. The rooms will be closed in the next 40 seconds, so then we will begin in the main room again. All right, welcome back. Everyone is back, Sarah, so we can begin with the discussion.
Excellent. Great to have everyone back. Hope you guys had some animated conversations and some good peer learnings. As I mentioned earlier, we'll kind of go room by room, so breakout group by breakout group, and ask a representative to share kind of some of the key insights from the room. We have about 2 to 3 minutes per group. 3 minutes maybe. So from room 1, that was Emma, Gwari, Mary, Mohammed, and Ramata. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Pretty interesting people with really scary stories. I mean, something we have to learn from them. Mohammed and Mary had bad internet connection, so I'm just going to talk about 3 of us. So Ramata, first of all, Ramata, she has made us familiar with her situation. And going with Ramata and Emma and myself, I think the key takeaway is not giving up at all. Ramata managed, I mean, she's still managing her situation with the instability that had caused her land. But she's not giving up, and she is shifting her seedling. She's looking for alternatives, and just the fact that she's not giving up matters a lot. Secondly, Emma, she lost her house because of some loan cards. So, but people, in these situations, people break. They break a lot, and Emma was heartbroken, but she did not give up, and that actually matters. Instead, she used the garage of a relative, and she started working on there, and she's still working on whatever she has settled to do. And yeah, so something to learn is to get insurance of whatever we are doing. This is one of the takeaways. She has decided that she will be budgeting ahead so that she doesn't use all the money initially. And yeah, so the resilience is right there. As for me, not giving up is one of the things, but for my situation was adaptability. And we discussed how building a team smartly actually helps and goes a long way. So in my case, I'm working with the biomaterial where not a lot of people have knowledge about. So a lot of biotech technicians doesn't know about it. So instead of hiring a sales, marketing, branding person, I hired two people who has worked with this biomaterial. So when one is absent, the other one is there to take control of whatever we are working on, so that R&D never stops. So our takeaway is a mix of never giving up and adaptability and planning ahead safely. So yeah.
Amazing. Those are great takeaways. Thank you all so much for sharing those stories. We'll move on now to room 2. So that was Carlos, Joshua, Royford, and Leaf. Carlos, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. As you said, I was with Leaf, Joshua, Royford, and Patience. So I was glad to hear about their business ventures. They have in common that they share their resilience strategy in adaptability and diversification in terms of suppliers, clients, and technologies. It's always good to have dispersed suppliers in case one fails or one or another changes. So I shared a personal experience on a different strategy, which we learned today, called cohesion. We need to build a trustworthy network of suppliers or even partners. As we had a terrible experience last year that an internal partner um, betrayed us and shared our technology clients and even suppliers to a new employer to set competition. So it was terrible. We had a good technology, adaptable, resilient, and profitable. But we didn't give up. We identified our weak point. We did not have a trustworthy legal team. So that's what we did. Find a lawyer, fix this out. And the key takeaway from that terrible experience was to be more Machiavellic. Unfortunately, in business, anyone can betray you anytime, and more likely when they see that your business is profitable. So being Machiavellic doesn't mean being good or being bad. Just take precautions to avoid catastrophic events for your business. So cohesion is the strategy that I will highlight this time.
Thanks so much for also sharing that difficult story. Yeah, it is. I think for those of us that kind of like span the business world and the impact world or the sustainability world, kind of that balance is always so tricky, right? So I'm glad you are finding ways to make it, make a smart strategy that works for you.
Yeah, I'm just sharing this because I hope it never happens to any of the ecopreneurs, but they better be ready. So I just wanted to share that experience.
Absolutely. Why don't we move on to room 3? So that was Edna, Khalid, Lorenzo, Maria, Sarab, and Tomaz. Do any of you guys want to share some key takeaways?
I can share.
Thanks.
So yeah, it was a nice conversation. Not everyone was able to share, but I wanted to bring as a highlight what Lorenzo shared about his business and about the situation of Colombia, his country. first he approaches that his business sells as a product. Also, part of his product is the resilience because he is selling something that the other business can use to run themselves if anything happens. So that's cool. But it's interesting how now he has to deal with the high costs of new employees that um, some months before the money that he would spend to employ three persons, now he just can use one person. And also what even get worse is with the situation now between US and Colombia and the threats that the president offered to Colombia. So I think what we brings from this is adaptability. We always have to be flexible and adapt also to the external world situations. Sometimes we are doing really good in our in what we can handle, but we can never know what's going to happen outside of our companies and in the road, and we have to be prepared even though.
Thanks so much for sharing. Let's go to room 4. So that one was Daniel, Lydia, and Margaret.
Okay, hello. So we also had a risk money in our room. One common trend amongst all of our businesses, a couple of points that we discussed amongst all the businesses was due to the capital intensive nature of some of the startups, we discussed maybe repurposing locally available materials for different uses in our businesses to reduce the setup cost so that we can set up at cheaper costs and be able to scale up quickly. We also discussed diversifying our revenue sources. That way we are not dependent on only one income stream and we can be able to withstand shocks from policies and other things that can affect us here.
Excellent. Thanks so much. I'm glad you guys had kind of that opportunity to discuss, to share some of the challenges and the tough stories you guys have fought through, because I do think those are so powerful for your peers to hear and to learn from. So thanks so much for kind of sharing the stories, for sharing kind of your learnings from this session, what you are already doing or what you plan to do. Really excited to see kind of how you guys grow over the next few months. So maybe just one last comment from the EY side. All of you now should have received kind of the introduction to your EY coach. If you haven't, please email me and Leah, and we'll make sure that's sorted out. I've already seen some of the EY folks kind of respond with and propose some time, so excited to see all of those relationships get off the ground, and to hear from you guys about how those relationships are going. And I think with that, Milena, I can hand it back to you.
Perfect, Sarah. Thank you so much. Maybe also to add on the coaching, and also to maybe define it a little bit from the next week IP coach session, which is a one-off session. It will be really on IP related questions. So I saw that some of you already sent some questions over, but kind of try to keep them really patent or IP related, because they are the ones who can really help you specifically on that topic. And then any other kind of more overall business related, then are perfect for the EY coaches. So that's just also to differentiate for next week, that 45 minutes you have, how can you make the most value out of that? Great. Then it's picture time. As usual, we want to take one picture. There's a lot of sun on my end right now, but let's switch on the cameras and then we take one quick picture together. All right, Joshua, yes, perfect. Lorenzo, you had your camera on earlier, so I know it works. And I know, okay, 1 second. Too much sun. It's
Too much
unusual.
sun is the right problem to have.
Exactly.
We like
Okay,
that.
now it's sorted. We had to do the manual one. All right, perfect. By now, all of you have the camera on, so we can take a picture. 3, 2, 1, smile. Perfect. That worked well. And then just a few reminders. We have our next week masterclass is really on IP, right? So also pre-think a little bit on questions you have around this, so you can share that with your coach. We're gonna go in that session really do a deep dive on the topic. You know, what are the things you really have to have protected, particularly in scaling. There we'll also get to know the diagnostic tool. So you get a one-on-one instruction on how to use it. Either you do it by yourself beforehand and then send it to your coach, or we do use the masterclass really to show you how to use it best. And then following, you send that report to your coach so that everyone is well equipped. That also being said, I mean, Sarah and Leah on the EY coaches, they would also really appreciate if you could share the presentation, your pitch deck, all of this as well. So I think as much as preparations you give and the materials to your coaches, the more they can really help you, right? So you really use the best out of that time. I see you, Lydia. 1 second. Let me go through it, then we can have the question. We still want to finalize the Accelerator booklet, so we can also use this and actively promote you. If you haven't responded to Hannah, please do this, because this is, the information we want to use from you. Also on the mentorship, please let us know if you had contact with your mentors by filling out that survey, and otherwise we can help you to get there in contact. For those countries, once again, who have a little bit longer term or longer timelines to actually get an appointment at the French embassy, please make sure that you have an appointment set. I received a couple of questions, should that happen now or after the announcement? That really depends on your situation. On our side, it would be a very much a pity if at the end you have been selected and then can't make it to France because you don't have the visa done in time. So please do it as soon as possible. If you haven't done it yet, I would be rather really do it now. So on that end, people ask, when is the announcement? The announcement will be on the 10th of February. Who makes it to the next stage? That again doesn't mean the accelerator continues, right? So all of you continue having the accelerator all the way until end of March. And as you can see, like the programs continue, like EY continues, the CITLI continues. So even though if you not make it on the 10th, that's not the end of it. We continue, and I will still want to see you on that end. And then please make sure, we mentioned it already, but that you block the time of Change Now, which will take place from 30th of March until 1st of April. And the travel would be from the 29th of March to the 2nd of April. So block this in your calendar now, if you haven't already. Yes. Okay, then I saw Lydia, you had a question, and then Royford.
Sorry, no, I didn't. I didn't have a question. I didn't realize my hand. Yeah.
All right, then Royford, over to you. Also
Hi,
no?
Milen.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
just hope we are all doing well. So I just got matched to Jane as my mentor, actually last year, but then I didn't get connected with her, and then I was matched to Benedict Karaoke, and I also tried to connect with him, but up to now, I've not established any contact with either of the two. I would appreciate if I can get support to see I can be able to connect with my mentor. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, thank you. I'll note you down, and we get back to you on this. Thanks. Emma?
Yeah, sorry. So about the visa appointment on our end, I think I sent an email detailing some information that is required from me for the application before I can finish the application. So just to straight to the point, I need the residence or location for the host organization and the contact person in France. So I asked for that information via email. Thank you.
So we don't have an organization in France. So if you need a French organization, we could see if we use the Change Now contacts or use ours in Geneva. So yeah, maybe text again on, and then we can take it bilaterally on that end.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, then I would say let's give a big shout out again to Sarah and Leah and to everyone else that you shared so openly today our challenges and also the plans to go resilient, adapt to new situations. And then I'm really looking forward to see you again next week. Enjoy the rest of the week and then the weekend. Take your time to rest and get recharged. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.